So you were saying about the self-awareness. That's so how do you do that? How do you work on self-awareness?
Well, it really boils down to paying attention to what's going on within. Really, I see that. I see this as vibrations, as energy, and we continuously project through what the energy that is within us. So
Mhm,
without paying attention, we continuously project through what we have gathered in the past, right? Uh,
mhm,
so we perpetuate certain, well, unhealthy habits and unhealthy patterns in our relationships, in relationship with everything and everyone really around us. And this is if we are not paying attention to the field of energy that we project through on a
mhm,
ongoing basis, we literally limit ourselves to seeing only the known from the past rather than the unknown opportunities and
mhm,
possibilities out there. So yeah, that's self-awareness to me, like being able to spot the energy within that we are reacting out of. We are reacting, or we want to react on an autopilot out of. And when you spot it, and when you know your values and you know who you are, who you want to be, when you spot that energy, then regardless of that energy, you can react out of that version of you that you want to be, right? And the
mhm,
energy, but it's very important to allow that energy to flow. So instead of
mhm,
suppressing, repressing it in the body, as we are, most of us do, just allow it to be with you, around you, but you're reacting out of your higher self, as opposed to your old self, the ego, or the wounds from the past.
mhm. That's so true, and that is a lot of it is actually work, isn't it? It's like we have to do the work to do that. We think it's we're built, we're grown, we're fully mature, and we're finished like a machine. But even a machine needs maintenance.
No, it's a really a continuous work, and with time, with practice, it becomes more manageable. Mm, but yeah, it's ongoing. It's ongoing. It's so easy to fall back into those old patterns and energies. And the more we suppress it within our field, this is how I feel it, the more it gathers and the harder it is to react out of, or not to react out of it. So it's important that to allow it to flow.
Mm.
It's really important to allow yourself to feel, so it flows through you rather than stagnates.
Yeah, that's true. It's the flow comes through our nature, and we get distracted so much. I know that I recently have learned that the two uh, entryways or portals into that awareness for me is slowing down and
Mm.
silence. And I
Yeah.
didn't realize that, silence is. And one day, what happened was my the radio in my car was broken down. And so I was so annoyed, like, I'm driving around. So I liked having either put on books or listen to music, of course, or the radio. And now it was silent. I was just experiencing my driving in a whole new way. And I realized I do that all the time, even my gardening. I put on my headphones and I go out there and I thought, wait a minute, what if I stopped distracting myself with all this noise
Mm.
and just listen? And it's been an awakening. It's like, wow. It isn't, and I think the piece that I've learned more recently is, the notion of, actually, I think I've known this for a while, but I think now I'm starting to practice it. In terms of the word boredom, boredom means, that I've got nothing to do, or I'm purposeless, or I'm stuck. But then I realized, actually, no, boredom means that I'm searching for something that isn't here. I just need to slow down. And when you do, you start. You said the word. I think I love that word. It's noticing. Once you start noticing, um, and that the gift is right there. But that is such, uh, as you can. Part of what you said is we've been programmed to act in a certain way and think in such a way, and to release that program. That's the work. That's the tough bit because it's so easy. It's to just you know
With
go
the
with the show.
fear.
Was it go with the show rather than go with the flow?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's we can perceive that going with the show as going with the flow because we are so used to it.
Yeah.
But as you said, it's the stillness within is where we really all should spend more time.
Yeah. It's all of the great ancient wisdom sources, whatever religion we talk about, whether it's Islam or whether it's Buddhism or Christianity or Judaism or Sikhism or Hinduism, they all, without exception, have their founders wandering around doing nothing, like going on a either a what do they call it when they go people go walking for a religious break? Um, I can't remember the word. Um, but they always they had these long breaks where they were.
Like pilgrims,
Oh,
pilgrim.
that's it. Thank you. Pilgrimage. Thank you. So they all of them cutting across all the different faiths. The wisdom came through the pilgrimage. And what is a pilgrimage? It's taking a walk. It's going into silence. It's going into faith. It's going into not having to be attached to what's happening now and to
Yeah.
enter the unknown. And so, um, so that's I'm working with a colleague of mine, Jan de Vish, from Belgium, and
Mhm.
we've been working on this question of how do you create a more humane organization. And what we've come back to is the laws of nature, and the laws of nature are about silence and noticing and regeneration. And it's not even about recycling; it's about the continuous process of life and death, the continuous cycle of renewal. And we don't like the dark side. I mean, we want to hurry it up with pills and with media and with distraction and noise. But in that darkness is the seed for our awakening.
Yeah, yeah, completely. I mean, because in that stillness, you start seeing what really creates your life, and
Mm.
it's very uncomfortable when you know all these emotions of shame, guilt, fear,
Mhm,
anger,
mhm,
resentment, grief, sadness from the past.
mm.
When they flow through you, it's super uncomfortable. It's like we really want to run away. That's why we keep escaping ourselves. But the more you feel it, the more that energy dissolves, the more new perspectives you gather. Really, you channel, really, like more
Mhm,
perspectives are channeled through you. It's really amazing when we dissolve more of this energy, and those new ideas and perspectives just flow into us organically. We don't have to sit and discuss it for hours. They just come easily. They flow.
mm,
So that's why I see this working with these energetic stagnations as an
mhm,
amazing path of growth, because in order to grow you need more perspectives, new ideas, and they come organically when you allow them, when you first allow yourself
oh,
to
wow.
feel.
That is so powerful. I mean, organically and naturally. And one of the things that came through the summer for me was I was bending over so much doing the gardening, and I was like sometimes spending 2, 3 hours in the garden. You forget time. You just kind of lose yourself to being in service of the soil and the plant, and all your environment around you. That in the mornings I started developing this sciatica nerve. So I would have this. It was kind of the weirdest. I've had back pain before, and upper back, lower back, but this was something quite unusual. It would be like this on both sides of the soft spot of my back, lower back, right through my legs, into my feet, into my toes. There would be this snap. There would be this like electric shock, this spasm, and I would just be like paralyzed for a few seconds, and then it would go. And it started happening every morning. And then during the day, as I go through the day, it would get better until the evening, where I'd be careful, but it would be gone. And so I went to the doctor, and he said, "Look, you can go to the chiropractor. You can go to, if you want. But really, what you're going to do is slow down, and the body will repair itself because you've just been pushing it too much." And I thought, wow, the body is telling me, slow down. Like you're slowing down for the plants and for the garden and for nature, but you're not slowing down for yourself. And as you say, that's the nature is there to repair ourselves. Um, um, what my family, my mother-in-law, my brother-in-law got involved in a really bad accident a year ago, um, and he broke like 6 ribs. He punched his head. He was just luckily to survive, and the doctor just said, "Well, with the ribs, they will come back to the normal position." So, as you say, there's so much of our nature there to repair ourselves, and we just have to give it space and time.
Completely. I mean, we each of us has self-healing powers within, but going back to that sciatica, because no pains, aches, illnesses, diseases, etc. are coincidental, and every part of our body shows us different signs and gives
Mhm.
us different messages.
Mhm.
And when it comes to the spine, lower back especially, it's all about the because sciatica is firstly nerve. So I would next time
Mhm.
it happens to you, I would just pay attention to the thoughts that you were having just a moment before,
Mhm.
because our bodies react to the thoughts and our emotions. So it's yeah, just pay attention to your thinking patterns that were leading you to these incidents of pain in of sciatica. But that starts in your lower back, which is very much rooted in safety generally, and stability in life, and supporting yourself in life.
Mhm. Mhm.
When you're continuously doing something against yourself, your lower back will most likely be problematic.
Mhm.
And then there are many layers of it. With over time, they become more subtle. So that lack of self-support comes in like various ways of our behaviors, actions, and thinking patterns. So it's really important. That's why I'm so much into this kind of meditation and subconscious healing, and
Mhm.
working with the energy, because all of it is accumulated in our body, and the parts of the body that are affected are not coincidental. And you can feel into yourself in a deep meditation, listen to your body, to the part that is hurting you or is problematic in some way, and it will tell you all you need to know.
So true. You're right, and you remind me of a friend of mine, Ashlyn. Wilson, she's in Ireland, and she said the same thing to me. You've got to slow down and pay attention or notice. And one of the things I started doing was I switched off the music, took out my earplugs, earplugs out, earth in. And and now I've started to meditate with my gardening. So before I was doing it as a chore, I was kind of fixing the plants. And I didn't realize you're exactly right. I was forgetting myself in that process. And I started to go back more to my deeper meditation and to yoga and sitting still and being in silence. And that's caused a complete change, a shift in my energy. And the sciatica has got better because of that.
Yeah,
Because I was running away from me, and I didn't realize.
yeah, completely. Completely. We are all, our bodies are our vessels, it's true, but they're very much connected. They always give us signs. And, I might be extreme, but I truly believe that even like a few months ago, it happened to me when I was looking for some. I was thinking to myself one day that I was looking for, it would be great to have an excuse not to follow my plans for the weekend. I was supposed to go to my parents for the weekend. It was my birthday weekend, and I was kind of working through certain things from my childhood. So I thought to myself, it would be actually better not to go so I don't trigger others unnecessarily. I wanted to move through it myself, to heal for myself, whatever was what it was that I gathered back then. And a moment later, I literally walked into the door and I broke my little toe. Or maybe I didn't break it, but I bruised it to the point that it was so painful that I couldn't walk. So I literally provided myself an excuse. And when I realized what I was thinking about a moment earlier, I was just amazed how quickly we act upon our wishes and desires, right? So it's very important to pay attention to everything that's going on. And I know it's not an easy task, especially in this fast-paced world. But oh my gosh, like literally our lives depend on it.
Completely,
Yeah.
completely. By the way, has it healed? Did it break, or is it just bruised?
It was bruised. By now it's all good, but
Okay.
back then it was painful for a couple of weeks. So yeah, I didn't go eventually. I didn't.
It's
It
so
was
true,
like
though.
an excuse, a good enough excuse not to go.
But it's so true, though, the psychology of pain, which we treat as a curse, but actually is, as you pointed out, an awakening.
Yeah,
The body's telling us something,
yeah,
and we then douse it with chemicals and pills and ways of trying to cover it up,
yeah.
which is to some extent okay, fair enough. If it's an accident or like you said, but still behind the pain
Mm-hmm.
is a deeper, not just meditation, but medication.
Completely. Yeah, I completely believe in that, and psychology is starting to explore it as well. There are some um, theories in psychology, and they're being researched now, and data is being gathered how the body is reacting to all the emotional patterns within us and the subconscious patterns that we are not even aware that we are having them. But more and more researchers are proving it as well. I've recently heard that you can study psychosomatics, or if you can, is it called that way?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's already becoming popular, almost like it's coming into the conventional approach to healing. So yeah, I completely believe in it. I mean, this is how I've been healing myself as well. I truly
Hmm.
believe that there are no coincidences in our bodies.
No, it's true because I used to think that there was Western and Eastern medicine, and then it suddenly struck me one day, especially working with Jan de Vish on this book, that there isn't Eastern Western. There's industrial and pagan. That even the Western culture has only been 100, 150, maybe 200 years at maximum, that we've had this mechanistic industrial approach to life. But even in the West, if you go back to all of our pagan festivals, ceremonies, cultures, and practices, they're all about returning to nature. And we've somehow in the last 200 years, and now I've noticed even in the East and West, they've become automated. They become um, there are no festivals, but in the human nature, we still have the urge and need to be with others. To have so we have musical festivals now, and sports festivals and events which allow us to come together and to play and to. But really, what's rooted in that, I think, is the need to be still and also to connect and find that balance that was there in through thousands of years. And the other thing I find really interesting is a lot of psychology talks about the fight and flight response. It's got to the point now where I used to get annoyed by it. I was thinking, well, but now I kind of find it amusing that everything's reduced. And, oh, we were in the jungle and we would see a lion, and then we would have to either run or fight, and that's just not true. Yes, there would be things that scare us, but there are equally, you know, things like the pandemic when it came along was not a punishment or a flight and flight situation. It was just slow down. Pay attention. And the whole of humanity, we were having an awakening. And some people woke through it, and others just went as quickly as possible back to the distractions. And I think our nature is much simpler than psychology in the last 200 years has turned it into a machine and into how do you fix I think what's really interesting is, it's not about fixing what's broken. It's about paying attention to what needs healing and what is being
Yeah,
revealed.
yeah, yeah. Finding that root cause rather than healing or curing the symptoms, right?
Hmm. Yeah, because it's interesting when we have the starting point that I am ill, therefore I'm broken, and therefore I need to be repaired, whether it's psychological, like I have found where I'm broken, is what we do with machines. So with a motor car or with a refrigerator or a television, if something's broken down,
Yeah,
we mechanistically go through to the root cause of the problem. But the ancient pagan and ancient cultures around the world, across the world, didn't start with the assumption that we're broken. They just started with the assumption of that we have a wholeness that we have to go back to, and then we've forgotten our wholeness and our connection with our oneness. And so all of those cultures took us back through various um, customs and beliefs and festivals and ceremonies, which were designed to, often think about, when we think of holiday or vacation, what is vacation? To vacate, to let go. And we've programmed even that. And yet it's really the ceremonies, like whether it's Christmas or Ramadan or um, Passover or whatever the culture is. I remember thinking, like, when I was a child, Christmas growing up in England, even though we were of Sikh heritage as my parents, um, we were in a Christian country and Christmas became really special. And it was like that moment. And then suddenly you grow to like 16, 15, and suddenly you lose the Christmas feeling. It becomes a chore, it becomes an annualized ritual, and you have to go through it. But I realized, wait a minute, this. this notion of, which does actually again goes back to pagan times, of slowing down, paying attention to the shift of nature, slowing down and paying attention to what is happening in terms of um, the preparation for winter. Because Christmas came at the same time as the winter solstice, which was about slowing down and um, giving reverence to the shift of seasons. And I've learned through that, and I work with my clients now through a cycle of seasons. So whatever plan we're working on, I'll ask them, it's just such a lovely period, like 12 weeks is just long enough, 3 months to say, okay, so I know what to expect the next 2, 3 months. 6 months, 9 months, a year, those are visions and aspirations. But I can actually figure out within a 12-week cycle what I need to be, what's going to be happening, and relatively what I need to pay attention to. So now I match the development plans with nature and say, okay, so we've getting to through September into October, we're starting through getting ready for fall. So what does fall mean, and what is that preparing us for? And even though I don't literally take the seasons, but the notion of going to a more cyclical approach of renewal is I'm finding it's much easier than this constant race, constant pressure to be like this machine that's running at optimum speed, and constant, and the burden of that is like you say, it plays us through our bodies.
It's you are touching on something that I've been contemplating a lot, the coaching industry. Because a coach, I perceive coaching as a coach is someone that adds that pressure to. I think it's quite regular where coach adds more pressure on achieving, right, and adds this speed to this whole process. And I know many people who are like, from the outside, they seem very successful, and I see that coaching has helped them a lot. But when I feel into their energy, there's so much distress inside of them. So they're just hustling through, pushing through, because they have all these goals to achieve, and there is no time. Like, literally everyone is out of time these days. Like, nobody has time. And they don't even stop to feel what's within them, to allow that energy to flow through them. And I mean, I don't want to be a misfortune teller, but this is a path to illness, really. So I don't like to call myself a coach any longer because of this. I think I'm more of a healer these days. Even though I work on visions with people, but that pressure is, I think that we are all over pressured. Like we all should really slow down and feel more into ourselves these days. Of course, everyone is in a different place and life goes on. But I've worked with some people whom I helped to actually feel again, and that's like to pause and feel and kind of notice what's going on within, because if we don't, we are continuously projecting through that energy. It's just a circle. So yeah, all this self-development.
No, it's so true. I love the word hustling. It is this, and I love the way you said it's this constant hustling, hassling and trying and trying. And I noticed exactly as you say in LinkedIn and on Instagram, on Facebook, and there's this, we've got into this culture of these 30-second sound bites. And so you watch something and it's kind of revealing and it says, these are the 3 things that will change your life. And you go, oh, and you can lean forward and go, and it's always, and even record it or save it and go, I must listen to that again. And then, the next one pops up and the next one and the next one. And now you've had like an hour, maybe 2 hours of your life vanished. And I just look around at my children, I look around my family, my friends, and even clients. And you're right, it's become this industry. It's
Mm.
become industrial. And we've got this illusion that, if I just take one more, meme or one more social media message or one more TED talk, that suddenly, but it's become itself a distraction. It's become an industry that is feeding on itself because it needs to keep creating the notion that I need to be fixed, that I'm broken, and
Yeah.
that the answer is right here. And it's the pill of this one thought or this one idea or this one video or book. And the answer, like you said, it's right there inside, just waiting for us.
Yeah. And it's such a trap. I mean, I've been caught in it so many times. A couple of days ago, I was going for, maybe it was, yeah, a couple of days ago, I could feel, I nearly caught myself in that trap of my past, where I would escape myself because I could feel there was something to dissolve within me. But I put on some kind of podcast on, like, one of my favorite podcasts on YouTube, and I was listening, but I could not listen to it. Like, nothing was coming through. I was like literally neither listening to myself nor listening to the podcast. There was, I just could not focus on neither end.
Mm,
And I finally just switched it off, and I sat in stillness, and I dissolved
mm,
what was stopping me from even absorbing. Because if we continuously run uh on that autopilot full of all these energies going on, we can't even focus. We can't focus even when we sit down and do some work. Our mind is somewhere else. We are not productive. So like, we've got to switch off in order to be more productive, in order to be more focused in on our priorities. There's no other way. We've got to give ourselves some space for that.
no, we do. And you remind me of kind of my experience with death. When I was younger and I started to go to a funeral, it was a profound moment of stillness, of awakening. And in that silence, there would be this kind of return to my own life and all that I was taking um, for granted. And then slowly, as I grew older, I slipped into the performance. That even a funeral has been turned into a performance. There's these different stages. Every culture has a different um, a set of ceremonies. But then I realized, wait a minute, it's become a performance, and we're no longer detached from what's going on, and actually being absorbed by being present in the moment. It's the ultimate. A friend of mine who passed away 4 years ago, um, Anne-Marie, she was living in New Zealand. She was actually grew up in South Africa and said, okay, I want to go to a place where they've made a lot of money, they've got fame and fortune, and she got built a beautiful house on the beach in New Zealand. And when I went to visit there, the air was so pure where she was living. She and her husband like had created the dream come true, and suddenly she got hit with stage 4 cancer, and
Mm.
she survived 3-4 months. And she looked at me. She said, "I've been meditating my whole life, but I've been doing a performance."
Mm.
And she said, "There is." Um, Her words were, "Death is the um, purest fucking meditation," because suddenly now you are required to be present with everyone and everything. And as she said those words, I went, "Oh my gosh." even though we learn these practices, and even though we teach them to others, and even though the knowledge is there, the knowing gets subdued by that what you described earlier beautifully as the hustle, the constant need to be pushing through or fixing and correcting, and yet so we get caught into a life of performing, and so we're so caught up in those scripts that the drama in the script takes over, and we're now just going going through it. But yeah, it takes a lot of I would say courage to be with the anxiety, the silence, the not knowing, the ambiguity, and in that is just like um, in nature when we're um, having, if we have patient, life will renew because it's built for renewal, and those renewal cycles will continue and continue. But death is, I've now going to realize, wow, um, it's another industry. It's another. All of these things have become performance as an industry, and we've lost we think of it as an interruption, like, oh, I have to go to a funeral, I have to deal with this death, I have to deal with this grief, and I'll get over it. I'll take a few pills and I'll just fix myself. But no, grief. I don't know if you saw the um, um, what's her name? Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who wrote the book about grief. So
No.
she wrote. So she was a researcher. She did actually a lot of work in terms of. It was good that she kind of said she focused on grief and the stages, and she came up with these stages of dealing with death and grief. And I remember when I first read that, I started following these stages of shock and denial, and then depression, and then there's a breakthrough and acceptance, and then there's this new resolution. And I got so taken by this science of Kubler-Ross's stages of grief, and that I started to practice them myself. Started teaching them to clients. I even took it to the organizational level. Said, "Oh, this is where your organization is in its grief cycle," and people were like, "Wow, it takes a lot of money, and thank you for helping us solve this problem." And as I dug deeper and deeper, one day I hit this research, which showed that she actually lied. And what she did was she turned it into an industry, into a product. And she started to she actually made up the research. And then as I dug deeper, I was shocked to find that people who worked in hospices and people who were dealing with death on a daily basis in hospitals and in care homes said, no, there are no stages to grief. Grief is different for everyone. And it's all about being present. And there are no stages. If you lose a child or you lose a loved one, that pain is there with you till the end. It doesn't get resolved. It doesn't go through a cycle. There isn't a. And then what I discovered was, as I got deeper, was that she actually got so obsessed with her research about the grief cycle that she fell in love with this guy who, again, he was a trickster, and he said, he could connect you to the dead. So because she's now got this fortune and fame, and everybody's paying her big money for her books about the grief stages. He kind of said to her, "Look, I can help people go back to the dead." So she set up a farm where he would go in a room, and at that time it was normally women, widows, because their husband had died. He would take them in the room and connect them with their dead husband. And so she'd got now so obsessed with her fame that what happened was she trusted this guy because she thought she'd conquered death. And what happened was then suddenly the local doctors started realizing there was an uprise in STDs. And women were getting more of, and they started to go, wait a minute, why are we having so many local women were having sexual transmitted disease. And what happened was he was then telling women in the silence, in the dark, I am your husband. Oh, I need to touch you, hold your hand. I need to embrace you. We need to make love. And it was, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is a woman who's insane. Like, and yet now I see it on a daily basis, the Kubler-Ross death stages, because we've turned now death and grief into an industry, into something we can control, something we can fix ourselves. But the truth is that it's actually very dangerous. It's actually an illusion. But then, how do you stop the train?
Uh, can,
Everybody's on that
can you
train.
just remind me the stages that she talked about?
So I'll send you a link. So she started with, so the first stage is shock. You don't know what's going on. Then you go through denial. So from shock, you then dip into denial. And from denial, then you slip into a depression and sense of, and then from depression, then you have an awakening or resolution. And then through resolution, you then start to have new meaning emerges, and that new meaning takes you to a higher level. So those are the stages. And so what was happening, I was using those stages to kind of help people map, okay, where are you in this cycle? Not realizing that all of what the people in hospices and people in the caring world said, all of those things happen simultaneously. You can have shock at 2 o'clock in morning. By 6 o'clock in the morning, you could be in a resolution, and you can be back in the shock at 9 o'clock. It's just all of those. They're not these any. So I've learned that anywhere there's a stage model that tells you here are the 4 steps that you're going to go through. Typically, it's a sense of, it's a way of getting instant karma or instant relief, instant solution. So the stages are actually categories of things, of emotions we feel. But what I learned, though, from the deeper understanding of the death literature, from people who actually dealt with grief on a daily basis, is that there are no stages. There are emotions, and they're all happening to us simultaneously and differently, uniquely for all of us.
Mm.
So it's kind of moving from, and that taught me a lot about kind of being very careful then about staged models that tell you how an organization, whether it's moving to agile or agility or moving to um, um, any kind of transformation, any transformation model that has a set of stages, we have to go back to what you said earlier, to actually being still and being in the moment and
Mhm.
paying attention and noticing what's actually happening, as opposed to this kind of constant notion of we figured out death and we figured out grief and we figured out pain, and we just have to follow this model, and this model will do all the thinking and the not thinking, the unthinking and
Mm.
the being present. We try to automate it. We try to turn it into a performance, into a, a model, but it doesn't work that way.
I feel it's just that the difference between knowledge versus wisdom. So consuming knowledge versus embodying wisdom. Everything
Mm-hmm.
comes from embodiment, from own experience. And when you actually mentioned about these stages, they felt very familiar to me, because when I was going through my grief recently from the past, I had to, what it reminded me of? These continuous death and rebirth cycles throughout our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And with each, some grief is present, I find,
Mm-hmm.
because that death is dying some old identity within us.
Mm-hmm.
At the beginning, there is a shock. Just as you said, maybe I wouldn't put it as linearly, like as in a, it's not as linear, but I would probably put it similarly as she did. Although there are many more, there's like a whole spectrum of emotions that you go through. But when you go through it and you feel through it all, the last stage is that new perspective, growth. But it's a continuous thing. Like it doesn't really end. Like you can work on something, work for something that is happening right now, but soon, very soon, again, you will be dissolving yet another part of you, like yet another identity of yours, or identity, what I mean by identity is some kind of attachment that we have in relation to XYZ in our lives or within us. And there is always this cycle which feels very similar to what she presented. I would probably have to read her book and all of it.
She learned from the people who were dealing with death, but then she automated it and turned it into a performance and into a prediction. And I think that's where she went wrong. But I think the part of it, though, goes back to the question of knowledge is interesting, because I didn't realize that knowing, the word to know, derives from the notion of noticing. So when we're noticing things, and this is something you said at the very beginning, I thought was very profound, just paying attention and noticing is the source of knowing, of knowledge. But what we've done is, so it's not so much a model, is, as I think, we've turned knowledge into a performance, into an act that occurs around buying a book or listening to like you said, a podcast, or finding a piece of research. That suddenly that knowledge is going to come into us, and now we've fixed the problem. We've figured out the answer. But what we're not doing is knowing, or noticing, or being in the moment. And that's that again, I find, is in every single culture. There's no East and West. There's basically pre-industrial and post-industrial. And so the very notion of, I mean, why is it this is one quandary I always ask myself, is why is it that we have Jesus, so much is about him going to prayer? Like, he's Son of God. He's like, why is he praying? He's got all the answers. And you see everything, you look around every culture that's, worships the Buddha, he's always meditating. Like, I thought he'd fixed himself. He's like, so why is Jesus praying and why is Buddha meditating? And I realize, wait, they're telling us something here. This is exactly what you've been saying today, is we have to slow down. We have to pay attention. We have to be present. So if praying and meditation is good enough for them, for Jesus and Buddha, it might be that we need to go back to ourselves.
There is this I find it funny, and I used to be caught in it, this kind of spiritual bypassing. Every like people, I wouldn't say everyone, because many people have come to similar conclusions, I'm sure, but there are many people out there who after enlightenment, because they think that once they reach that state there will be no more work to do. They would just be in bliss all day long.
Exactly, nirvana. It's all the pill, once we've taken it.
But that's not the case.
No, and I think that's, it's become, again, it's back to something you said earlier about, it's become like the coaching industry, the healing industry. This is, and I'm like yourself, like I've got the certifications and all that stuff. I'm like, I don't want to be called a coach. A coach is a carriage that takes you somewhere. I don't want to put people in a carriage and take them somewhere. Coaching has become that industry where you get into that carriage and you're driven away and to resolve something. But it does actually go back to reconnecting with the nature of things, and nature itself, and nature, and reconnection with nature. And understanding that even our identity and sense of ego has been defined as being individualized, but that's not real. It's all manufactured, and we get attached to that ego, identity, property, and that's when we're cursed. That's when we're in trouble because it doesn't last, and when it doesn't last, then we get this whiplash of, oh, uh, and I think for me, the biggest part of grief is regret, the realization that, oh my gosh, for all those years and moments, I was with someone, I wasn't truly with them. I was too busy performing the role of the son or the brother or the friend or the sister or the mother or um, daughter, and I was performing a role, and we weren't really. We've lost um, time in those performances, and yeah, that to me is the biggest part of grief, is the regret.
But then self-compassion should really be part of this whole journey as well. As you were not aware of what you are aware of now. Before you were not.
Mm-hmm.
And all this understanding comes with time as well. And it's all necessary, right? If we all had all the answers to these questions long time ago, it would be boring. There would be a lot of boredom.
Back to boredom again. The pill of all, mother of all pills. So no, it's and I think you're right. It's the self-compassion again goes back to being attuned to the moment, as opposed to trying to fix ourselves or to either blame or, like I said earlier, I think blaming and shaming has become um, part of the block. And so there is no blame, there is no shame. There is really just breath, breathing in the moment.
Yeah. Yeah, what comes to my mind is and that spiral of consciousness of growth. Because I've been very I felt ashamed or really kind of self-judgmental before, because all these cycles of death and rebirth tend to seem very similar as we go through life, and we may catch ourselves thinking, gosh, I've been here before, like I've already kind of moved through this lesson like hundreds of times.
Mm.
And how is it possible that I'm here again, like in this spot? And from the top, when you look at the spiral, it looks like it's the same place.
Ah,
From the sides, you are like a couple of levels up already.
yeah, that's so true.
And this is where that self-compassion kicks in. Like, okay, here's yet another perspective on it. So what is the new perspective on it? And this is how I see growth. And that's like, level up our growth, our moving up the consciousness spiral levels.
Beautiful. And that's, as you said earlier, that is wisdom. That what you just described is the path to wisdom.
Yeah.
But we like the pills. The pills are good. Watch the movie, take in the ceremonies, take the podcast, and hey, I'm fixed now. But you're right, the stepping back and paying attention and being kind to ourselves and to each other, that's where the wisdom comes from.
Yeah. Yeah, and I wish all of us more of that self-compassion.
That's a beautiful place to conclude. So thank you for your time again. And thank you for taking the time just to be with me today, just to go through these explorations. It's wonderful, and we
Likewise.
continue through that cycle.
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah.
Mhm.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Um,
So we'll be in touch. Okay, take care.
take care.
Okay, ciao.
Bye.